Hello, and welcome to the first episode of my podcast. I want this podcast to be the most vulnerable place and honest place that anybody could come to. And I'm going to set a lot of good intentions into this podcast. I want to start off by just making a small disclaimer for the people who are going to listen to this when it comes out, that this podcast is going to just be a safe place, like, for people to come where they have, like, some mental health clarity and stuff like that. I want this place to be honest and vulnerable and just somewhere that people can come to just listen to my voice and hear my opinions on spirituality. So, come along with me on this journey. I want this journey to be something that is very spontaneous. I want my first episode to be something that I remember forever. So, let's get started. I just made kind of like some questions for myself, since this is going to be just like an introduction. This video is probably not going to be very long, so let's get started. Why did I want to start a podcast? So, the reason why I wanted to start a podcast was just because while I was going through a spiritual awakening, I didn't really have anything that I could go and listen to that could help me with my mental health and what I was going through at the time. So I kind of made the decision to start a podcast just to inform people that are going through the same thing that I'm going through, that I'm here and we are in this together, because there's a lot of people that are going through the same thing that me and you are going through. I kind of want this thing to be kind of like a one-on-one. So that's why I wanted to start a podcast. I want this to be a really, like, I know I'm gonna have like listeners and it's gonna be like kind of like an audience thing, but I want this to be kind of one-on-one, like just for the beginning few episodes. I want this to be a one-on-one thing, because I know that there's a lot of people that are going through spiritual awakenings, and when I was going through one, I didn't have a podcast that I can go and listen to, so I want this to be here for the people that are going through one. For the second question that I did for myself was, why did I name Pure Polarity? Why did I name the podcast Pure Polarity? There's actually a lot of reasons why I named it Pure Polarity. So in the beginning, when I started having a spiritual awakening, I started falling in love with the yin-yang symbol. And I've always known that the yin-yang symbol just represents the feminine and masculine energies and the dark and light energies of the universe. So once I started learning about that whole concept, I just started to fall in love with it, because I knew that the light and dark represents everything in a human being. We all have light and dark sides of ourselves, whether we want to admit it or face that truth or express the light and dark sides of ourselves. They all exist in every human being. So when I really started doing spiritual work on myself, and I started having a lot of realizations about the dark side of myself and the light side of myself, that pure polarity because pure polarity kind of represents polar opposites. the two polar opposites of something. That's what polarity represents. So when I finally came up with this podcast name, I knew that it was something that represented my entire life. Like I feel like it represents like the two opposites. It represents like the light and the dark sides of all of us. So that's pretty much why I named it that. I thought that was like an awesome name to name it. So for the third question that I have for myself is just, what are my intentions with this podcast? I know that this is the first episode, and when I upload this episode, I'm gonna be so excited. I'm gonna be like, this is the first episode of my podcast. Like, this is miraculous. So the reason why, my intentions for starting this podcast are really just to spread spiritual awareness and a lot of spiritual realizations that I've had during 2020 and like just during this year, because at some point I've just felt like I need to start sharing the information that I've been realizing. And I understand that not everybody is gonna understand everything that I have to say about spirituality, because a lot of people don't really recognize spirituality because it's so shaded in our day-to-day life. It's so shaded. It's never talked about. It's like it's obsolete, So when I was going through an awakening, it was just something like I knew that at some point I was gonna have to start sharing the information with other people, because it doesn't matter like how I feel about certain topics. If somebody is going through the same thing, they could probably need this advice. They could probably need what I have to say about spirituality or just perception in general. So my intentions are really just to spread awareness and let people know that we all have sides of ourselves that we question every day, whether they're good or bad, or whether you don't want to put a label on any of it. So yeah, it's basically just for mental clarity and mental relaxation, deep states of relaxation. That's really what I want to target for this podcast. And then finally, what are my niches for the people that are going to listen to this podcast? I have multiple different ideas that I want this entire spectrum of the podcast to be dependent on. Like, I was thinking about maybe I could do some series, maybe I could do like meditation sessions on this podcast. I like to talk about spirituality. I like to talk about mental health. I like to talk about conspiracy theories. I like to talk about aliens. I like to talk about a lot of that stuff. So if anybody here is interested in some of those niches for you guys, then I would love to make some series about that stuff for my next couple episodes, because I know that I let people know for the second episode it's going to be like my questions. So if you guys have anything to add to that about spirituality or about zodiacs or about any of that good stuff, I'm definitely here. I want to talk about all that stuff with everybody that's going to listen to this podcast. I am really excited. Like, I'm shaking. I'm so excited, like, to talk about all this stuff in the future, especially with this being really my first episode. I wanna be able to look back on this first episode and know that there's so many people that want to talk about this stuff, but they're like kind of hesitant because they don't really know if all the stuff that they hear or believe or feel is true is necessarily true or not. I'd love to really connect with people on a level of just relativity. So give me some of your thoughts, and I'll be able to make a second episode on any additional niches like aliens or conspiracy theories or zodiacs and spirituality and all this other stuff. I'm really excited for how this is gonna go. So that concludes the first episode of the podcast. I hope you stayed the entire 10 minutes, and I can't wait to see you on the next one. Bye.